I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury for Thursday, January 5th, 2017. We're going to have the invocation by Mr. Brame and Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Anderpont. Please stand.
Let's pray. Father God, we just love you. We just give you praise and glory for who you are. We just ask tonight that you watch over and protect us, and just the decisions that we make please you tonight, Father. We just ask for wisdom and discernment, and we just thank you for all your many blessings. We ask these things in your precious name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Yes, sir. Mr. Anderpont?
Here.
Mr. Bears?
Here.
Mr. Brame?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Farnham?
Here.
Mr. Guidry?
Here.
Mr. Guillory?
Here.
Mr. Hunter?
Here.
Mr. Latour?
Here.
Ms. Mayo?
So you look good.
Ms. Mayo?
Oh, sorry, here.
Vice President McMillan?
Here.
Mr. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Hemming? Here. Mr. White?
Here.
President Landry?
Here.
Everyone's present.
Thank you, Ms. Kathy. Before we get started, we would ask that everyone please silence your cell phones. And if you wish to speak on any item that's on the agenda, that you fill out one of the blue slips you'll find there at the front of the room and hand it to someone at the staff desk. Item 4, election of the president of the police jury for 2017.
Make a motion to nominate the Honorable Kevin Guidry for president. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. Guillory to nominate Mr. Kevin Guidry. Need a motion to...
Move to cease nomination.
I have a motion to close nominations by Mr. Farnham and a second by Mr. Hunter. Congratulations, Mr. Guidry.
Look at Daddy cooking.
I couldn't
vote on it.
I
Roll
couldn't-
call, Madam
I
Secretary.
couldn't move fast enough. It's over.
Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Done. 1 year.
Before we get started, I would just like to thank all of my colleagues for having the faith and the courage to put me up here, because I know this is a big task, and I can't say enough, but I'll say a little bit more about it later. But Mr. Landry did an outstanding job, and hope that I can just walk in his steps. And I just hope that you guys can
I
continue.
got news for you, Kevin. Nobody else wanted the job.
Well, I'm honored to have it, Mr. Francis. We'll move on to item number 5, election of vice president of the police jury for 2017.
Mr. President, I place the name of the Honorable Guy Brame for vice president for 2017.
I have a motion by Mr. Anderpont and a second by Mr. Farnham. Is there any objections?
Close nominations.
I have a motion by Mr. Hunter to close nominations and a second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none. I have a wonderful vice president. Would you come forward, Mr. Brame?
Thank you, sir.
Way to go. Glad to have you.
Yes.
The guard. You don't get the states. I need Mr. Cal. That's right.
Moving on to item number 6. Oh, I'm sorry. I would like for my vice president to have a few words.
I'd just like to thank the jury for y'all's support and confidence that y'all have in me. I just want y'all to know that I'm going to serve y'all with honor and dignity and stand along President Guidry and do anything that he needs me to do. So, and I appreciate everybody. Thank you.
I wouldn't say do anything.
What's that?
That's a lot.
I think Guy and I going to do extremely well because our LSU football tickets are together. Moving on to item number 6, First Station of Plaque to the 2016 officers. Miss Jessica.
Okay.
Al, I present this to you. Vice President 2016. You did a great job.
Thank you.
We appreciate you, and the one good thing is I don't have to cover for you.
That's it. I'm always covering for you.
I'm always covering for you. So thank you. Good job.
Thank you. Look, they want us to look this way. Oh.
Perfecto.
Mr. President, could I say a few words, just a minute?
The floor is yours, Mr. McMillan.
Oh, I thank the jury for letting me be your vice president, and it was an honor serving with our president, Mr. Landry. We have one of the best juries in the entire state. I'd rank us up with the entire nation. And one of the reasons we do is because we have a very good staff and very good administrator, and we've got people that really back us up and make us look really good as police jurors. It's an honor to serve on this jury. Although I won't be the vice president, I'm going to work very hard to do the best I can as a regular member of the jury. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. At this time, we'll do the president. Mr. Landry, a lot of us younger guys that came on the jury when you was here, and one of the things that always stood out in my mind, you was always willing to extend a helping hand in helping a lot of us younger ones learn the ropes,
You're not young
basically
enough.
learn the things in which we had to do as jurors. But one of the things that stands out the most about me is you're the kind of person, what you see is what you get with this guy. And that's what I like about you. And that's what you stood for, and I hope that's what you continue to stand for. Congratulations on being an outstanding president for 2016, Chris. JP, is that going to be in the American press tomorrow?
Front page.
We
John's here. John's here.
All right.
newsworthy. If it's a slow news day, perhaps, probably not.
Item number 7 is hold a public hearing at 6. We're not at that point at this time. Oh, I am so sorry. Chris, I'm ready just to jump into this.
All business.
President 2016, Mr. Chris Landry.
That's great. Real quick, though, I thank everybody, and like Hal said, the staff makes us look good. I mean, they really do. And, you know, when you surround yourself with good professional people, sometimes things, it just seems like it's so easy. They really do. They make things easy. But there's a lot of work that goes into that. You know, it doesn't just happen. Also, thanks to Mr. McMillan. He's I don't have to tell him how wonderful he is. He already he already knows. But you know, Hal's been I guess we both came on at the same time way back in 1999, and it was good to have Hal here. We give each other a hard time, but it's all in fun. And Hal, you're a good juror, and I think a lot of you.
Thank you, Chris.
And you know, I wouldn't say that if it wasn't true. And I mean, you really are. You're full of bull, but you do a good job, and you take care of your people. I mean, you really do, and you always have the best interest of the jury at heart, and that's what matters. But thanks to all of you. I really appreciate all of you, and it was an honor to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And before we move on to any other items, I already know that I have a wonderful vice president. He told me, he said, before you get started, Kevin, there's someone in the audience you need to recognize. And I just want to say hello to my wife, Michelle, for being here tonight on me accepting the presidency. Thank you so much. Item number 7 is the 6 o'clock action. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and move on to item number 8. We're not at that 6 o'clock action yet. And moving on to item number 8, take appropriate actions on applications for liquor and beer permits. Mr. Crane.
Mr. President, we have 3 renewals for you tonight. We recommend they all 3 be approved.
Approve.
I have a motion by Mr. Andrepont and a second by Mr. McMillan. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 8 passes. Moving on to item number 9, consideration of approving payments of all current
Move
invoices.
on 9. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Andrepont and a second by Mr. Bears. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 9 passes. Moving on to item number 10, consideration of approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the police jury dated December 1st, 2016. I have a motion by Mr. White and a second by Mr. Collins. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 10 passes. Moving on to item number 11, consideration of adopting a resolution approving a request by the Cameron Parish Waterworks District Number 10 to drill a water well within the district boundaries of Calcasieu Parish Waterworks District
Move
Number
to
9
adopt.
of
Second.
Ward 4 for the expansion of the Cameron LNG facility. I have a motion by Mr. Fornum and a second by Mr. Barris. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 11 passes. Moving on to item number 12, consideration of adopting a resolution calling a special election to be held in Sewage District Number 11 of Ward 3 and 8 of Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana, on April 29, 2017, for authority to renew, levy, and collect a special 9-meal tax for 10 years, beginning January 1st, 2018, and ending December 31st, 2027, with
Move on
collections
12.
for the levy estimated to be at $241,797 for one entire year for the purpose of operating and maintaining the district's sewer facility. I have a motion by Mr. Latour and a second by Mr. Scott. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 12 passes. Moving on to item number 13, consideration of adopting a resolution approving a call for an election to be held on April 29, 2017, by the Board of Commissioners of Fire Protection District Number 3 of Ward 4 of Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana, authorizing the renewal, levy, and collections of a tax of 6.02 mils on all property subject to taxation for a period of 10 years, beginning with the years of 2018 and ending with the years of 2027, for the collections from the levy of the tax estimated to be at $1,051,048 for the entire year for the purpose of operating and maintaining said district's fire protection facilities, continuing works of public improvements. I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Fornum. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 13 passes. Moving on to item number 14, consideration of
Move on
adopting a
14.
resolution approving a contract between the Police Jury and Progressive Construction Company, LLC, for Ledger Road Sidewalk Safe Route to School project. I have a motion by Ms. Mayo.
No, Mr. Scott.
I'm sorry, I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Ms. Mayo. Mr. Landry would
Thank you,
like
Mr.
to
President.
have a word.
Item 14, Mr. Connor.
Okay.
What year did we start this in?
About 7 years ago.
Oh, come on now, it had to be longer ago than that.
It's been about 7 years that we,
It was before the last time we redistricted. It was in my district. These poor kids, so are we actually going to start, they're actually going to build it now? We're in the construction phase.
yes, sir, we are.
How much longer do you think till they're going to start?
We will be having a pre-construction meeting once we coordinate that with DOTD, so I would expect it's going to start this year.
Those kids going to that school, they're not going to that school anymore.
I think they're probably graduating.
Yeah, they're probably out of high school by now.
I think they are.
Hey, but I appreciate you staying on it. I mean, it took time, but at least you got it done. That's all it takes. And I know you were dealing with, a federal grant, and
That's correct.
has a tendency to slow things down, and then right-of-way issues. That's best I remember.
There's a number of issues.
A number, yeah. Well,
Federal grant money usually is a long time.
Well, we appreciate you sticking with it.
At this time, is that
Thank
all,
you.
Mr. Landry? Mr.
Yeah,
Scott?
I did want to thank Mr. Landry because he's the one that really pushed for this a long time ago. I even think I got some gray hairs now. I don't think I have those here, but
Yeah, you probably didn't.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Landry for that project, and I'm glad to see it happen. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there any other discussion? Any other objection? Hearing none, item number 14 passes. Moving on to item number 15, consideration of adopting a resolution approving a utility and drainage servitude
Move on
agreement
15.
for the Port Development Group, LLC, for Coach Williams Drive Extension Project. I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Fornum. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 15 passes. Moving on to item number 16,
Move on to
Consideration of adopting an
16.
ordinance rescinding
Second.
ordinance number 6818 due to property being redeemed. I have a motion by Mr. Hunter and a second by Mr. Latour. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 16 passes. Moving on to item number 17, consideration of adopting a resolution authorizing the submittal of a continuing grant application to the Annie E. Casey Foundation for an amount
Move
up
on
to
17.
$75,000 to begin a regional hub for the Foundation Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative. I have a motion by Mr. Fornum and a second by Mr. Landry. Is there any discussion? I do have discussion. Mr. Guillory.
Yes, I was just going to ask, I know our juvenile center is one of the top in the United States. Is this making it more sort of the hub type for it, or?
Mr. Gilliard, I think Mr. Summers will come up here and speak on behalf of the hub site.
Okay. I know our detention center is rated really high in the United States, and I'm just wondering which part.
Mr. Summers, please state your name and position here with the parish, please.
Mr. President, William Summers, I'm the Director of the Office of Juvenile Justice Services.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Summers, I know our juvenile center is rated really high, and I just was wondering what part will this play in it?
This continuation grant is actually to train other facilities that come throughout the nation. They'll come down and learn how to do what we do at the Mark Center. They'll learn how we operate in our detention center and other places in our probation, wherever. This grant is a continuation grant at the Casey Foundation about the last 6 years or so. It's actually been increased this year.
Thank you so much for everything y'all do out there. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Boland, is there anything else that you might want to add to that? Because this is a real special project that we're doing here. I just know that you've been a big leader in this, and if there's any other things that maybe you would want to comment on, you're more than welcome to.
Just that we should be very proud of the work that they're doing out there. I know everyone viewers know that, and hats off.
I had a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Any other objection? Hearing none, item number 17 passes. Moving on to
Move
item
on 18.
18, consideration of adopting a resolution approving an amendment to the architectural engineering service contract between the police jury and Champo Evans Autor for the Office of Juvenile Justice Service Complex Project. I have a motion by Ms. Trimmy and a second by Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott would like to have...
Yeah, Mr. Beam, if you could explain, what's the amendment?
Thank you.
Sure. I tell you what, I'd like to ask Dean Kelly to come up. He can give a good answer on it, more detail than I can.
So it's a nuts and bolts question.
Yes, that's exactly
He's a good nuts and bolts guy.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
Good evening. Dean Kelly, Director of Facility Management.
Thank you, Dean.
As you know, this is a very large project. And, larger the project, the...
Dean, put your mic up. Sorry.
This is a very large project, and so when we started the project, we didn't know exactly where we would wind up. So when you get into that, you know, we didn't know if we were going to have one building or multiple or exactly where we'd wind up. You have to establish a budget to then establish your A&E contract. We did that. Now that we've completed design development, we need to adjust the A&E contract to meet the size of the project we are today.
Courtroom included?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Is there any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 18 passes. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Thank you. Moving on to item number 19, consideration of adopting a resolution authorizing the parish purchasing agent to extend standard bid contracts for the calendar year of 2017. I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. White. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 19 passes. Moving on to item
Move
number
on
20.
all bullets.
Consideration of authorizing the parish engineering to advertise for the following projects. Thank you, Mr. Landry. Let me just read those into the record. And I have a second by Ms. Trimmy. Just read those to the record. A, Calcasieu Parish Project number 2017-01, overlaying of various roads in Ward 5 and 7 of Calcasieu Parish. B, Calcasieu Parish Project Number 2017-02, overlaying of various roads in Ward 6 of Calcasieu Parish. C, Calcasieu Parish Project Number 2017-03, overlaying of various roads in Ward 4 of Calcasieu Parish. Item D, Calcasieu Parish Project Number 27-04, overlaying of various roads in Ward 2 and 3 of Calcasieu Parish. E, Calcasieu Parish Project Number 2017-05, overlaying of various roads in Ward 1 of Calcasieu Parish. F, Calcasieu Parish Project Number 2017-06, overlaying of various roads in Ward 8 of Calcasieu Parish. G, Calcasieu Parish Project Number 2017-07, striping of various roads in Calcasieu Parish. I had a motion by Mr. Landry and a second by Ms. Trimmy. I do have discussion by Mr. Andrew Point.
Need the floor.
I think it was just
I need the floor for a minute, please.
You have the floor, Mr. Andrew Point.
Mr. Connor, is Jim Pickens Road included in this Ward 4 overlay?
Yes, sir.
Good. It'll be demolished before long, I promise. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew Point. Is there any other discussion? I do have discussion. Mr. Scott?
On that Jim Pickens Road, are they gonna allow y'all to do some intersection improvements to help with that Houston River Road backup and all that?
Yes, sir, we were getting DOTD permit approval, and that should start pretty soon.
Cool. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 20 passes in all bullets. Thank you, Mr. Landry.
Move on 21 in all bullets.
21, consideration of
A and B.
authorizing the parish purchasing agent to advertise for request for proposal for the following: A, fuel card software system replacement or upgrade for use by the Department of Engineering and Public Works Department. B, automatic electronic defibrillator, AED equipment and service for parish facilities and park. Did I pronounce that right, Mr. McMillan? All right. We have a motion by Ms. Trimmy and a second by Mr. Latour. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 21 passes. Item number
Move on 22, all
22.
bullets.
Consideration of authorizing the parish purchasing agent to either advise for bids or purchase utility state contract purchasing procedures for the following: A, 2017 vehicle and or equipment for use by Police Jury Department. B, 136-inch asphalt concrete saw. I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Ms. Trimmy. I do have discussion. Mr. Forner.
Thank you, Mr. President. How many vehicles are we talking about here? It just says 2017 vehicles. It's not
Les, if you'll,
2017 vehicles, is
Let's
it?
hope not.
On 22, there's an attachment if you'd like to look. We can count it real quick, but
Can we pull that up on the
29?
screen?
yeah, we do it for the full year. And it's broken down. Well, I'll show 20. Oh, I see. Okay, I just had page one.
I don't see an attachment on that particular one. If I'm doing this wrong.
Go to your left column on number
Okay.
22 and tap it. You'll
I see
have
it now.
And it counts.
Kill it, kill it.
It's not just regular vehicles, Les. It's
There's quite a number of vehicles
Public
here
works equipment.
that are due for replacement.
Absolutely,
On a
yeah.
schedule.
yes,
And it's something that we have budgeted.
yes, sir. All of these were in the budget, and the vast majority are replacements based on high mileage. And in a few cases, it may be a new addition to the fleet, but it's usually because of a special case. For example, a couple of them are related to the newer drainage operations that we're getting into.
So it's all based on an ongoing program that y'all all have
Absolutely.
established.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 22 passes. Moving on to item number 23, consideration of adopting a resolution accepting the
Move.
Calcasieu Correctional Maximum Security Window Replacement Project as substantially complete. I have a motion by Ms. Trimmy and a second by Mr. Collins. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 23 passes. Moving on to item number 24, consideration of adopting a resolution
Move on
accepting Calcasieu
24.
Parish
Second.
project number 2016-02 as substantially complete. I have a motion by Mr. Collins.
Who was the second?
I have a second by Mr. White. Thank you, Mr. White. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 24 passes. Moving on to item number 25. Take appropriate action on terms of the following members of various boards and districts and further adopt resolutions approving appointments and reappointments. Moving on to item A, Ms. Carrie Vick, Community Center
I'd like to
and
move
Playground
on
District
A
number
to
7.
appoint
Ward 2.
Mr. Todd Armentor.
I have a motion by Ms. Latour to appoint Mr. Todd Armentor and a second by Ms. Mayo. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item A passes. Item B,
On B, move to
Mr.
reappoint.
Dale
Ms.
Sanchez,
Second.
Calcasieu Parish
Ms. Dale
Public
Shantz.
Library.
Ms. Dale Shantz.
I have a motion by Ms. Trimmie to appoint Mr. Dale,
Mrs.
Mrs. Dale Shantz,
Doctor.
and a second by Mr. Landry. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. B passes. Moving on to item C, Mr. Paul Orno, Calcasieu Parish Public Library System. I have a
Second.
confirmed.
Oh, I'll make the motion to that.
Second.
Okay.
Sorry, I was
I have,
reviewing something else.
I made a second.
okay, I have a motion by Ms. Trimmie and a second by Mr. McMillan to appoint Mr. Paul Orno.
Okay.
Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item C passes. Moving on to D, Mr. F.J. Sylvester,
I'd
Ward
like to
2,
move to
Fire Protection
reappoint
District
Mr.
number 1.
F.J. Sylvester to the Ward 2
I-
Fire Protection District.
I have a motion by Mr. Latour to reappoint Mr. Sylvester, and I have a second by Ms. Mayo. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item D passes. Moving on to item E,
I'd like to move
Mr.
on
Lawrence
reappoint
Huffar.
Mr. Lawrence Huffar.
Ward 2, Fire Protection District number 1. I have a motion again by Mr. Latour and a second by Ms. Mayo to reappoint Mr. Huffar. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item E passes. Moving on to item F, Ms.
I'd like to
Karen
move to
Nealon,
reappoint Ms.
Ward 2, Fire
Karen
Protection District number
Nealon.
1. I have a motion by Mr. Latour, and I have a second by Ms. Mayo to reappoint Ms. Karen. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item F passes. Moving on
G,
to item
move
G,
to
Mr. Robert
appoint-
Bobby Choi.
Bobby Charlie.
Charlie, I'm sorry,
Second.
Ms. Sam. Ward 6, Fire Protection District number 1. I have a motion by Ms. Trimmie and a second by Mr. McMillan to reappoint Mr. Robert Bobby Charlie, that is, Ms. Trimmie? Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item G passes. Moving on to the last one, item H, Mr. Danny Benoit.
Move to reappoint
Waterworks
Mr.
District
Danny
number 10,
Benoit.
Ward 7.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. Scott to reappoint Mr. Benoit. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item H passes. We have a 6 o'clock action. At this time, we're going to move back to number 7. Okay, item number 7, hold a public hearing at 6 p.m. as a result of notice provided to the owners of the properties described below to show cause as to why the structure and said properties should not be condemned. Item number 1, 1646 West Burton Street, Sulphur, Louisiana. Mr. Robinson, please state your name and position with the parish.
David Robinson, I'm the code enforcement supervisor. And at 1646 West Burton, this is one manufactured home. The owner is a Gerald Eugene Welton et al., and we recommend this structure be condemned and removed.
Move recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Trimmie and a second by Mr. McMillan.
Bears.
Mr. Barris, is there any discussion? Is there any objection? And should I say, Mr. Beam, is there anyone in the audience
Yes,
that would like to
thank
speak on this matter? At this time, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this matter? That's it. Hearing none. Item A passes. Moving on to B, 345 George Street, DeQuincy, Louisiana.
This is one house on this property. The owner of record is Robert Allen Fowler Jr. Edux. We recommend this structure be condemned and removed in 30 days.
Did you have a picture of it or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Can we just look at the picture?
Sandy, if you
They should have it.
If y'all
I'm
can
not
click
seeing
Sandy,
it.
little round square, it'll come up.
No, it ain't up. No, it's not. It was not on the screen.
It's not
Okay.
available. It says it's unavailable. Black screen. There we go. Okay. It's hard to see, I'm just saying. I mean, is everything just totally rotted down, or, I mean, I'm trying to look at it, but it's not real clear. I can see some of the ceiling tiles coming down, I can see some stuff happening. Can you give me the down and dirty on it?
Yes, ma'am. It's basically abandoned, open to the public.
Okay,
We've already had to cut the grass, remove junk on the property. No one's.
okay. Well, I move to oppose planning.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Trimmy and a second by Mr. Scott. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this item at this time? Hearing none, we'll move. Item B passes. Moving on to item C, 712 South Grand Avenue, DeQuincy, Louisiana.
I'm gonna move on this one. I've seen it.
I have a motion by Ms. Trimmy and a second by
When
Mr.
you see it,
Stewart.
you'll see what the situation is.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah.
Any objection? And is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on item C? Hearing none, item C passes. Moving on to D, 2880 Highway 3063, Vinton area.
This is one manufactured home. The owner is a Timothy Wayne Jackson Edux. We recommend this structure be condemned and removed in 30 days.
Move on item D.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. McMillan. Any discussion? Any objection? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on item D?
Nah.
Seeing none, item D passes. Moving on to E, 1235 Sistrunk Road, Moss Bluff area.
This is one manufactured home.
Move
The
on
owner
E.
is a Stacy Michelle Saunier. We recommend this structure be condemned and removed in 30 days.
I have a motion by Mr. White and a second by Mr. Collins. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on item E? Seeing none, item E passes. Item F, 2223 Hickory Street, Sulphur, Louisiana.
This is one manufactured home with an addition. The owner of record is Donna Sadler. We recommend these structures be condemned and removed in 30 days.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Forner and a second by Mr. Collins. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Is there anyone in the audience at this time that would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, item F passes. Moving on to the last item, item G, 706 Neal Road, Westlake area.
Move on, G.
This is one manufactured home. The owner of record is a Kenneth Jean Riley. We recommend it be condemned and removed in 30 days.
I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Landry. Is there any discussion? Any objection?
Anyone in the audience?
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on item G? Seeing none, item G passes. We're going to go back, thank you, Mr. Robinson. We're going to go back to item 26. Item number 26, consideration of adopting a resolution of condolences to be forward to the families of the late Wilmer Joseph Johnson.
Move on 26.
Jr. Mr. McMillan.
Thank you.
I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Collins.
Mr. President, may I have a word?
You have the floor, Mr.
Thank you.
McMillan.
Yeah, Phil is a lifelong resident of Westlake. He passed away. He'd been sick for a while, but he passed away. The funeral was actually today. I went by the funeral home, but very much a family man, and served his church, served the athletics of Westlake. But this is where you're going to remember him. Him and his wife, Paula, were the people that brought the Ulster group up here. Phil was the guy behind the Ulster Kids and the Ulster Project that was always there. And, you know, there was a lot of goodwill between Northern Ireland and Southwest Louisiana. And Phil was just a gem of a guy. And he will be missed in Southwest Louisiana. And he did a lot of hard work on that Ulster Project. So his family's going to miss him dearly. Southwest Louisiana, Westlake area is going to miss Phil. A really good guy. And he did a lot of hard work for the diplomatic needs of Northern Ireland and Southwest Louisiana. So that's who Phil was. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Well said. I knew him also. Him and I worked together for quite some time at the Isle of Capri when I was there. And I kind of grown fond to his grandson, who played for Westlake, Tyler.
Yep.
And good people, Hal. And I know exactly what you're saying. Just hate to see Phil pass on, but great guy. Moving on to item number 27, consideration of adopting a resolution of condolences to be forwarded to the family of the James W. Bill Dimmick. Mr. Landry.
Move on 27.
I have a motion by Mr. Landry and a second by Mr. Brain. Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I don't know, maybe some of y'all knew Mr. Dimmick, but you talk about a nice man, and I mean a big guy too. I mean he was a big fellow. When he'd shake your hand, I mean his hands were so big. I mean it would just your hand would be lost. But real calm. It's a good thing, because a big guy like that, you wouldn't want him to have a temper. But it was in the parts business a long time, and it really ended up, he was a competitor of mine, and we ended up the last two locally owned parts stores in Lake Charles. And, you know, he ended up selling his family business. But, I mean, a great business guy. I mean, just fabulous. I know Miss Trimmy, she's shaking her head. Her father-in-law actually bought from the Dimmick family for years and years in their parts store. But he really was a great business guy. I want to say they had the 13, 18 stores. I mean, he ended up with a lot of stores all throughout South Louisiana. But I'm going to tell you, you know, sometimes today you see people that you compete with, and it ends up not being a very nice thing. But this man wasn't like that at all. I mean, just quite the gentleman, and just always was nice to everyone, and I had a lot of respect for him. And I'm going to tell you, whenever he was ready to sell that business, he wasn't so much worried about the money. He was worried about his employees. And you don't see many people like that anymore. I mean, you know, he's really one of a kind. But I'm telling you, that was his main concern. He was so worried about those people. And he had a lot of long time employees. People would work for him for 30 or 40 years. And he wanted to make sure that they were all taken care of. But just a good guy, and he's really going to be missed.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Ms. Trimmy, would you?
No, I wasn't going to say anything, but kind of under my breath, I was just telling Mr. Scott, they just don't make people like that anymore.
No, they don't.
God blessed us with a lot of wonderful people, and Mr. Dimmick was one of them. I'm telling you, wonderful people.
Thank you, Ms. Trimmy. Moving on to item number 28 is an advised item. At this time, I would like to receive a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I have some point of personal privileges. I do apologize. First, I have Mr. Barris. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. They had sent an email out to everyone, and I don't know if anybody saw it, but I've got a physical copy to me from the Niblets Bluff Park Authority just thanking us. That was a big ordeal that they went through last year, and the assistance that we gave them, I mean, it really came at a great time, and it really got them out of a bind, and they truly appreciate it. I mean, I'm not going to read it, but you can just tell. You can tell that they are very appreciative, and I wanted to tell y'all, thank y'all for y'all support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Barris. Mr. Scott.
Good. Unless you want it.
I mean, if you have something, I don't want to ever not.
Well, I'm just curious, you know, we're going to begin, now that you're the president, we're going to get those questions now, and I was just curious how you're going to be able to distance yourself from this vast TV empire that you're now part of. You know, I'm just curious.
I'm going to do my best to keep it under control, Mr. Scott.
That's all we can ask. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there any other matters for discussion?
Not a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion by Mr. Antroport to adjourn. A second by Mr. Landry. We're now adjourned.
Mr. Landry.